There's only 4 things you need to know to win with Facebook ads, and today we're going to explore all of them.
People get really obsessed with efficiency metrics, but the ultimate goal of every business is to make as much money as possible any given day. Profit is the goal. Creative is the bullet right now. What you say in your ad directly results in who sees your ad. So what doesn't work these days is broad. It does not function as well as specific. What the construction worker isn't going to relate to is the guy who's running on the track. Just be like, solution. That is killer.
My special guest is a growth strategist who helps direct-to-consumer e-commerce brands grow with paid ads. His agency is called The Moonlighters. His course is the Facebook Ads Blueprint. Sam Piliero, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
Thanks, Michael. I'm very happy to be here. Having a good day.
Awesome. Well, let's start with a little bit of your journey. How'd you get into paid ads?
I was drop shipping like many other people. I started a Shopify store for the very first time in 2014. And one thing led to the next. I joined VaynerMedia, so Gary Vaynerchuk's agency. And I was on an early e-com team there. I was there for about 2 years, learned so much there. That was like my full dive into everything. And after those 2 years, I went over to BarkBox. And when I was at Bark, that's where things really started to accelerate for myself and my career. And over the 3 years there, they were around $150 million business, and they became around $1 billion business at peak, publicly traded on New York Stock Exchange. And that was a big, fast, 5 to 7 years of crash course on ecom. And I think it was really the peak, or rather the truly the quickest you could possibly learn Facebook, Google, and growth from different experiences at the same time. And I had really good mentors along the way from those jobs. That's kind of how it all started to flow.
Well, and tell us a little bit more about what you're doing now.
Yeah. Now, so after 3 years at Bark, New York Stock Exchange, and everything gets a little red tapey, a little bit no more fun anymore. We were breaking things. We were having a ball for quite a period of time. And I started a agency on the side. It was a paid ads agency, Facebook ads and Google ads primarily. And I was moonlighting. And after 2 years of moonlighting, when I was still working a full-time job, I realized that I should make this moonlighting thing a full-time thing. And that's where the name comes from now. So the agency that I run is called The Moonlighters. We're a group of around 25 people. We work with around 100 brands, give or take. And we specifically work on direct-to-consumer e-commerce brands that are in the $1 to $10 million range. So that's been the focus for, what are we looking at, 4 or 5 years now. And it's been a tremendous journey, learned a lot, got to move myself out of the day-to-day of ad accounts and into growth operating an entire business machine. Very, very different. And then we also do an info side where we educate in a community, school.com/Facebook. Right now, we're the fastest growing Facebook ads community on School. And that's way more accessible. Anyone could join, where the Moonlighters is quite gatekept. We have a little bit of a wait list. We only work with larger brands. So that's kind of what we're up to right now. And it's, I'll tell you what, it's fun. I'm having a ball.
Love it. So what do you see as some of the big misconceptions that are going on when it comes to digital ads? I know Meta is kind of your platform, but I would imagine that whatever we're about to talk about is just as applicable to probably any kind of online ad.
100%. I think there's two things. First, people get really obsessed with efficiency metrics, which are very important for making sure you're not hemorrhaging the business, you're not losing money. But the ultimate goal of every business is to make as much money as possible any given day. Profit is the goal. And a lot of the times we get really caught into, how can I get a super high return on ad spend or a really low CPA? And the reality is, yes, those are good metrics to understand, can I spend more money or can I pull back, or how healthy is the business? But those are not good metrics to understand what's going into your pocket at the end of the month, the end of the day, et cetera. So I think more businesses should continue to focus on profit as their core metric, contribution margin, if you will, and less on the efficiency metrics. What we see with the businesses we work with is generally, if you could run in like a 10 to 20% margin in profit on the business, meaning let's say you make $1,000, if you could take home 100 to 200 of that $1,000 in profit, you are golden in terms of ecom. And instead of chasing a 10 return on ad spend, if you chased a 2.2, you might be able to scale a lot more, build an army of customers, and actually have lifetime value for these customers that keep coming back over and over and over again. And then the one unspeakable, unmeasurable, actually very speakable, unmeasurable is word of mouth, which compounds massively as you build that army of customers. I think that's probably the biggest misconception when it comes to advertising in general, and especially like digital, like Facebook and Google. And then there's one more thing that I'll chime in here, which is a lot of people try to either take way too much control of their ad accounts or the exact opposite and give too much control to the algorithms. We find that there's a sweet spot. I'm sure we'll get into it at some point, but what we generally see is way too complicated, dozens of campaigns, dozens of different strategies all running at the same time. None of it's actually working together. Or, hey, let me just give my 10 pieces of creative to Facebook, cross my fingers and pray to Zuckerberg that it's all going to work out. And there's obviously a strike that needs to go in between there.
Love it. Okay. Well, I love this a lot, actually. So when people pay close attention to what we're about to talk about today, said another way, when digital ads are deployed properly, what's some of the upside? What's some of the benefits that maybe not everybody's thinking about?
Yeah. So I think that when I share this, know that I'm coming from a position of these are like, I see it all the time, right? We work with a lot of brands. I see businesses that grow. The upside of really, really dialing in your ads are that you can scale to an extreme that you would not be able to scale organically. And you could put fuel on the fire at your will, right? So a couple examples here, like we have 5 businesses that are at an elite level of total ad spend and total revenue, right? So most of the businesses we work with are in the $1 to $10 million range. These businesses are now in the $50+ million range. And this group of 5 in particular were all businesses that about a year ago, actually, they all came in around the summer of last year. All 5 of these businesses were sub $30,000 per month spenders, making less than $100,000 per month in revenue. And
overall, or just from ads, you mean?
Overall.
I see.
Total Shopify. They just met the threshold of being able to work with us, which is around $1 million business annually.
Got it. Okay.
4 different categories, 2 in the same category. And of these businesses, the reason I bring them up is because they took the shot on continuing to produce creative, continuing to invest in paid media, focusing on the lifetime value of customers. They went all in on the upside, and now they are substantially large businesses. These are, to be clear, results are not typical. Like, these are serious wins. But the upside of really nailing your digital ads is that you can scale with a dial. And as long as you keep your inputs flowing, you can continue to dial that scale.
Love it. All right. Well, let's unravel a little bit of your method. Where do we start? What's the first thing we need to be thinking about?
Oh boy. Yeah. So back in 2018, when I was at VaynerMedia, I worked with this great group, and we kind of came up with this baseline structure of how we'd run advertising. I was just looking through some photos to see if I could find the original whiteboard that we had when I was over there. And long story short, parts of that structure are even more applicable today. Facebook and Google have gone through an arc of complexity. They were super simple, then they were super complex, and now they're more simple than they were just a few years ago. So the system that we follow, we call it the M4 method. It's 4 stages that we take every business through. Some of these stages kind of overlap, if I'm honest about it. And They generally apply to every single kind of business. So whether you're watching this and you're an e-com, you're a small business, you're a large business, you're a lead gen business, service-based business, the same principles here, I applied them to my own business to grow. And that's the super big overview on it. But I'm happy to jump into something more specific.
So let's begin at the beginning. I mean, we're going to get into each of these 4 stages, but let's start with the first part of your process.
So I think everything starts with a good foundation. We call this like foundation or structure. An ad account structure is literally the foundation of the home. So you could have beautiful creatives, you could have a good offer, you could have a good product, but if you're just throwing these inputs into Facebook ads or into Google ads, you're often going to not get the desired result that you want. Sometimes you will. Don't get me wrong. A really good product, a really good offer, you can make it happen. But if you want like sustainable scale in a system that actually is building upon itself, you're not going to get there. So when it comes to account structure, we basically just do a few things. We have at the top of our account, the core of our entire account is a prospecting campaign budget optimization campaign. That is basically one single prospecting campaign that hosts all of our, we call them packs, but they're ad sets. Each round of creative is a new pack. It's going to sound a little advanced quickly, but it's not that complicated. Prospecting campaign, multiple packs. Second, we have a retention campaign. This is so critical. We need to make sure that when we increase our spend on Facebook ads or decrease, we know where that spend is going. We know, is it going to new customers? Is it going to existing customers? Is it going to people mid-funnel? Where is it actually driving? Facebook will tell you consolidate, consolidate, consolidate. The problem with that is as you increase your spend, especially if you try to increase substantially, you're likely to hit roadblocks that feel like when I scale, my ROAS declines. If you break things out properly, you will know for sure, I'm spending more on new customers. I'm spending more on engage. I'm spending more on existing customers. So back to the structure, prospecting CBO. Then we have a retention campaign. That's all of our existing customers. And then we have 2 optional campaigns. The first optional campaign is a retargeting campaign. This is just people who are down the funnel on your website. Maybe they're engaging with your content, but they have not purchased. No money's been transacted. And then we have an optional scaling campaign. This is like your real just one spot for your top 3 to 5 ads that forces more spend against those ads. It does nothing special. It just forces spend against them. And what we find in this structure is we have a good balance of control and a good balance of algorithm letting the algorithm do its thing. So the algorithm can do its thing mostly in the prospecting campaign because it could spend freely across the number of ad sets and packs that you have. That's extremely valuable because we need the algorithm to spend its money where it's most likely to make money back. That's kind of the core of all of this. Secondhand, the control we have, which I think is critical because many people will hear what I just said and they'll say, yeah, I'm just going to throw it all into one campaign and just, I'll just pause the bad ads down. Problem is that's all you can do. The only thing you can do when you have one single campaign or you just group everything together, the only lever you have to pull is pausing ads. I really don't like this. When you have multiple packs, multiple ad sets, and you have a system that like what I've just laid out, instead you could use value rules. You could use ad set budgets and minimums and maximums. So you could effectively float cash to new performers or to new ads to guarantee that they get tested at the same time that you're maxing out on certain ad sets that are potentially fatiguing. One of the biggest problems advertisers run into is they'll have an ad that they've been running for many, many months, right? It's a killer ad for themselves. And that ad starts to decline. In a normal setup, all you can do, because that ad's still hogging the budget, it's still getting so much of the spend, all you can do is pause that ad down and just pray that Facebook distributes your cash properly. If you have multiple packs, multiple ad sets in the structure I just outlined, you could actually set a maximum on that specific ad set and ad that will allow the budget to cap. So it can only spend a certain amount. It's a much more easier system for then the money to be redistributed. Overall, Again, that balance of control and giving a little bit of freedom is kind of what we look for in the structure. And that's the foundation that really drives, again, these next three steps that we'll probably get into in a second here.
Okay, so I'm going to try to reiterate what I heard you say.
Please.
First of all, you got this prospecting, campaign, budget optimization, and this is where you allow the algorithm to do its thing. And then you have ad sets or packs underneath them, right? And you referred to retention campaigns, retargeting, and scaling. Do these live? Where do these live? And if there's an example, like with a hypothetical customer or whatever, so you can help me wrap my brain around this. I mean, I know retention is about obviously retaining people and trying to sell them more of the same product, right? Retargeting is getting people that have visited your site but have not purchased. And scaling obviously is, just taking what works and putting a lot of cash behind it. But am I missing anything? Like, help me connect all the dots here a little bit.
No, you basically outlined it pretty well.
Okay.
It is something that is much easier to see than it is to say. And if it helps at all, I don't know if I'm breaking the rules here, Michael, but I have an outline for it. We could send it to everybody. We could attach it.
Yeah. At the end, you can explain how it all works. Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. So once this account structure is in place and properly set up, what's next?
Creative. Creative is the bullet right now. It's the most important piece, I believe, once you've established your account structure. Again, we could use a house as an analogy here. You can't build the house. You can't build the beautiful rooms inside the house without the foundation being set. Car example is even better, right? It's like the creative is the body of the car, the foundation's the engine, right? Or vice versa. You need to have both in place to sustain each other. Essentially, creative changed massively about a year ago now, but really most notably around 6 months ago, give or take, with the Andromeda updates that came around. Just about everybody has only been able to say Andromeda, 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 and blame Andromeda for everything. Effectively, what Andromeda has done is it's condensed down the ability for Facebook to serve the correct ad to the correct person at the correct time. Just like how easy way I think about it is like when you scroll on TikTok or Instagram Reels, if I watch like 1 extra second of a carnivore diet video, all of a sudden my feed is just, I am a carnivore all of a sudden. Like I can't get away from it, right? And that's kind of how the ad algorithm has worked now. And what that means is that what you say in your ad directly results in who sees your ad. So we like to build what we call like a creative engine or a creative flywheel on our side. And it's effectively just making sure that we're constantly producing creative, not to say you need 1,000 ads, but to really showcase that if you did and were able to produce 1,000 ads, you would naturally have a hit more often than if you only produce 10 ads, right? Other thing to note here is when it comes to Andromeda, the way that I think about it is really easy for everybody to understand. You need to have an avatar that you target. You need to talk to that avatar's problems. You need to explain that there is a solution. And then you need to showcase your product or offer as the unique solution to that avatar's problems. So what doesn't work these days is broad creative, period. Images, videos. It does not function as well as specific. I always use the example of like a construction worker. I think it's a really easy avatar for everybody to wrap their head around. Construction workers probably have some back pain disproportionate to the rest of the population, right? They're smashing things, they're bending over, they're lifting heavy things, whatever. So if you drill down, if a construction worker is one of your avatars because you sell a back brace, if instead of just saying back brace for back pain, you instead said construction workers that have back pain, we have a unique solution for you, because not only does it wrap around your back, but it has these tighteners here and here, just like the pain points that you have to deal with when you wear your belt or when you wear the back, whatever.
Suspenders, whatever the heck they call them.
Suspenders, yes, thank you. If you drill in to the unique problem and position as the unique solution, you get outsized results in both Facebook and Google right now.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm clear on this.
Yeah.
Your ads should, especially if they're spoken video ads, right? They should specifically call out, like you said, right? Like, hey, you're a construction worker and you're dealing with back pain, right? Something along those lines, or somehow for construction workers who are dealing with chronic pain in your back. I mean, is this important that those words be in the ads, or talk to me about that?
I think yes and no. Like, yes, that is one angle. We're creating a lot of creative, right? So that is one of the creatives you should definitely try. I mean, for my own creative, I say, if you run Facebook ads, then X.
Yeah.
But also, there's other ways to get to that same thing by not necessarily saying the name or saying the exact avatar.
Showing the construction worker or
Show the construction workers,
pain.
show people who are similar to that, right? What the construction worker isn't going to relate to is the guy who's running on the track in a tracksuit.
Yeah.
They're not that does not work together. That targets people that are
Right.
running track and field. So yes, to an extent, call it out, but also just making sure that you call the problem and the solution out. Most good ads are problem solution ads these days.
Got it. Okay. So the Andromeda update, I mean, I've interviewed quite a few people on the show about that. They want a lot more creative than most people are used to making. Any tips on like how people can effectively do this without just giving it all over to Meta AI or whatever? I don't even know.
100%.
Yeah. What are your
100%.
thoughts on this?
So the Andromeda algorithm doesn't need more creative, right? All it needs is creatives that are good, and it's better at matching those creatives. The reason why everybody says more is because inevitably your hit rate on creative is not that high. Most people's hit rates are not that good. Anyone claiming they have an incredible hit rate, good on you. Just keep making the ads that hit. But for most of us, doing things more eliminates the possibility of not getting that hit, not getting that good ad. When I say hit, I generally mean an ad that performs above your target ROAS and has the capability to take 10% or more of your total ad spend. That's a hit by my book. So we want to manufacture hits. Some of the easy ways to manufacture hits are, first, book I love, which is over there. It's called Steal Like an Artist. Got it on my first day at VaynerMedia. And it very simply states that everything is stolen in some way, and it is your job as an artist, which we all are, to put your spin on it unique to your brand or whatever. So look at what your competitors are running and take those ads as inspiration. The Facebook ads library or tools like Magic Brief or whatever you use, they all do generally the same thing, and they allow you to see how long ads have been running. Look for the ads that have been running the longest and have high impression counts if your tool shares that. Steal those ads. Make more like that.
Okay. What are you seeing as working these days? I mean, any general...
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
So videos for top of funnel tend to work the best.
Okay.
And then everything mixed middle bottom funnel. The more that you could think of your top of funnel ad as the way to grab the most attention, but still be very relevant to the problem and solution. And then having everything middle and bottom funnel just be like solution. That is killer. That solution could be done with images and videos, but that tends to work really well. I think just everybody, if they thought about their product or their service as problem and solution, even brands like, people always refute to me and they say like, oh, if you're a fashion brand, like, I'm not solving a problem. Of course you are. You're solving a confidence problem. You're solving a problem of people looking good, feeling good. You could position your product as the solution to that. And the more you do that in your ads, generally speaking, the better results you get.
Now, you and I both know that there is a whole world under the category of video ads of kinds of ads, right? There's faceless ads with just, stuff happening on the screen and audio. There's AI stuff. There's professional actors that you can hire.
Yep.
There's the influencer kind of with the selfie kind of thing. I mean, like, any sense of kind of generally speaking, are you going to say all of the above?
Or caveat, like, they all could definitely work. The thing that we're seeing work the best right now is semi-professional user generated content.
Okay.
So really good scripts that are sent to UGC influencers, like people who make content for a living.
Mhm.
We're looking at like micro influencers. They could have somewhere around like 1,000 to 20,000 followers on Instagram, for example,
Mhm.
but they know how to produce reels.
Mhm.
You'll get outsized returns when you do work with bigger influencers because they're better at making content. But for a couple $100, $500, $1,000, you could work with a moderate influencer and get a package from them. Your job as the brand, at least how I see it, is to tell them your key points and scripts, like exactly key phrases they should use, and let them color the rest. They're a content creator. You're paying them not to say your word by word, but to fill in the gaps of what your product needs to be shared or what needs to be shared about your product, and then their unique experience with your product or service as well. That I think is the hot thing right now. It's working tremendously well.
Okay, we're talking about your M4 method and the first M, which M stands for, I'm assuming, your brand, right? Which is the Moonlighters.
Yes.
First M is the account structure. And if I've got that right, and the second M is the creative. Anything else on creative before we move on to the third M?
I think the one thing I just want to put in here is that iterations are not dead. A lot of people have this misconception, I believe, right now that ad iterations are not doable and creative.
Explain what you mean by that, just so everybody understands.
So I think people think creative diversity is needed, meaning every ad needs to look completely different. We've been kind of told this in the Andromeda era by Facebook that, hey, you need to have different creative. But really, what we have seen, I won't argue with Facebook. What we have seen is that creating similar iterations of ads, meaning very similar videos or very similar images of high performing ads, that it extends the life of the ad unit. So if you made like one image that was a shot of me going like this, right? Thumbs up, and put a headline on that image. If that was my best ad, the first thing I should do is make a second one exactly like that with a slight different change to it.
Different setting, different change of clothes, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think like different headlines, different change of clothes, different product potentially on me. If I was selling this hat that's on my head right now, changing the hat would be a completely different unit that I'm selling. But we know that something about that image works, or video, right? We know maybe a hook works really well. Something we do all the time is we repeat the exact same hook in a different ad and change the body, or we keep the body and change the hook.
Or a different influencer.
Or different influencers saying something extremely similar. Yep. Those are all iterations that I think people forget how critical they are. They work really well.
Love it. Okay. So what's the next part of the process?
Next, M3. We call this deep dives. So I'll tell a quick story here if you don't mind. During my days at BarkBox, every single day I would walk into this office, beautiful office in the city, tons of dogs running around. And I'd walk into the office and on Monday mornings, I'd say to my team, wow, guys, great weekend. Again, wow, guys, great weekend. Great weekend. Great weekend. Well, 8 weeks went by, somewhere around that. And I think the coffee just hit a little bit better that day.
Explain what you mean by great weekend, because they're not going to know. Everybody listening doesn't know what you mean by that.
So I'm sorry. Performance was great every weekend.
Yeah.
We would walk in, we were above our target. We made a ton of money on the weekends, long story short.
Yeah.
And I'd come in on, we were very accountable to our specific goals. And it just kept saying great weekend in the sense of we were killing it.
Yeah.
From a business perspective, not from I had a great weekend perspective. And after a few weeks of this, or really like 2 months of this, sadly, I was like, oh my gosh, it's a trend. And I wish I had identified this as probably my biggest win and loss at the same time for how long it took me to realize this. What we realized that consumer behavior changed for that brand on the weekends. We were able to spend way more money and drive way more revenue on the weekends compared to the weekdays for that business. And as some things stick with you, this stuck with me a lot. And as we started to work with more and more brands at the Moonlighters, we realized that this was very common for most businesses. Most businesses have a shape. They have something about them that is not just unique to their individual business, but often shared with their category. So sometimes what we see is like pet tends to perform on the weekends because people are with their pets on the weekends. We tend to see that things like anything related to like gifting a significant other tends to work really good on Mondays and Tuesdays in preparation for the weekend.
Oh, okay.
So there's a lot of these weird trends that we see, and to be honest, it doesn't matter. Like we'll never be like make an assumption based on that. We're always just looking at the historical data, and what we tend to see is that certain days or groupings of days of the week perform better than others, but we all spend the same amount of money on our ads every single day. If you ask 9 out of 10 advertisers how much they're spending, they'll tell you either the full month amount or they'll tell you the amount they're spending per day. They'll say, we spend about $1,000 a day. We spend around $10,000 a day. Very rarely will someone say, we spend around 1,000 Monday through Friday, and Saturday we spend around 2. Right? But if you ask old school marketers like you, Michael, you've been in this game, right? I can guarantee you day parted stuff back in the day because I did.
Oh yeah.
I day parted all the time,
Yeah.
and then it just disappeared. So what we realized is that
We
there's
time parted too because we realized that certain times of the day were better.
yeah, exactly, and that's I won't get to that, but we do push some accounts halfway through the day that need an afternoon boost.
Right.
But what we realize is that just spending more money on better performing days of the week can lead to massive efficiencies in the overall business, and there's a lot of volume available instead of continuing to do the same dollar amount every single day.
Well, and real quick, before we go too much deeper, folks, these things that Sam is talking about are probably human behavior things. And this is like not necessarily true for all brands, right? Like Saturday and Sunday might work for pets, but it's probably not going to work for other kind of categories. And I would imagine where you're going with this, Sam, is this is highly dependent upon each particular company and their products, right?
Certainly. We try to break this down. We call it the fastest horse. You would never go to a horse race and bet on every single horse, right?
Right.
And this philosophy, it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's going to go in here and look at their day of week analysis and immediately find a win. Some people will. But if you just take this mindset and apply it to every breakdown, like your placement analysis, so being able to look at like, am I running better on feeds versus reels versus stories, right? Same on Google. Am I running better on YouTube versus discovery versus search? Where's my PMAX spend going? Things like that. See the same thing on age. See the same thing on gender, right? We just want to make sure that most of the spend is going to the highest performing places. And then we can place in either value rules or straight up exclusions if things are not working as well. We tend to attribute around 20% improvements in efficiencies, meaning 20% improvement in ROAS or 20% reduction in cost per acquisition from this section of our process. I want to be clear. This could work without number 2, which is creative. This does not function without number 1, which is the foundation. If you try to go into your ad accounts and you try to rip 100 things apart and try to make 100 different manipulations and your ad account's already really clunky or too simple, you could really take away from your potential to scale the business. And that is definitely a concern. So I want to put a red flag in that.
Okay, well let's dive into this a little bit because I would imagine, depending on when you look at this brings up a whole bunch of things. First of all,
sure,
it's important to make sure that you know your winners are winning because it might look like your winners are losing depending on when you look at your data, right?
Yep.
So like how do we go about doing this? Talk to me a little bit about this.
So how we look on the broad strokes things is we always just want to look at a rough period of like 90 to 180 days, depending on how big the business is, right? You don't want to look back on like just a 30-day period. This is not analysis you do in like 10 seconds. You pull this by day, you break down either male, female, or whatever country you're breaking down or whatever day of week you're breaking down. All these breakdowns are done over long periods of time. So you're getting rid of some of the noise. The second thing that we tend to do in this is we tend to get rid of any outliers possible. I don't care what happened on Black Friday. I don't care what happened in Memorial Day weekend. What I care about is what's the evergreen period? What are the 260 or so days of the year that are non-sale periods for the business?
Okay.
That's going to help the most, right? Because look, when it's Black Friday, I don't care what day of week I'm spending my money. Run it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it starts, and that gives us the broad strokes. When we get to a more tactical level, as I think you were kind of alluding to here, yeah, we want to then use again this same mindset for even breaking down things on the ad level. You know, when we look at an ad and we say, "Hey, this ad's not doing well," or "Hey, this ad has a really low CPM out of nowhere, and it's not converting. What's going on?" Look at the breakdowns. Look, are we suddenly spending? Quick story. We had a creative recently with a brand of ours. They're a bikini brand, to keep it simple. And 99% of their advertising goes to females. And then there was one ad that got into some guys. And some guys had some not so appropriate comments to say about this ad. And what happened with that is the algorithm picked that up as a positive signal, and they started to serve more to men for this one ad. We noticed, my gosh, the engagement rate's incredible. CPMs are so low, but no one's purchasing. We look at the breakdowns. Okay, 900 of the $1,000 is spent on men. Get rid of men. Axe it. Right. We were okay with that 1% in the past because there's gifting. You know, there's people buying for each other. That's totally normal. Totally fine. Not when you have a situation like this, because that could overspend massively on the wrong thing. And that's why those breakdowns, those deep dives, as I call them, I think are so critical for everybody to understand.
Okay, so let's focus in on this day of week thing because I think that
Sure.
there's some big upside there. Let's say we've got 90 days of data. What exactly are we looking for? What kind of a variance from what you will say the average, you know what I mean, are we looking for in order to know that there's a signal there? How do we separate the signal from the noise, I guess is what I'm asking.
I generally, rule of thumb, look for around 20 to 30% of a difference in whatever your core efficiency metric is. Or if you don't know exactly what core efficiency metric you want to use, just use conversion rate for this.
Okay.
The second rule of thumb, please, these are not rule of laws, these are rules of thumb. The second thing I look at is, or rule of thumb that I follow is, I want my conversion rate to generally be the same every single day of the week. You're trying to run your business into a conversion rate or a ROAS or a CPA that is sustainable for the business, right? So if you need a 2 return on ad spend to be profitable, then you should make sure you try to achieve that on all days of the week, not just Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And when you're at a 3 on Saturday and Sunday, that's actually a miss. You're leaving a lot of money on the table. So the way that we like to approach it is we'd like to spend aggressively into all higher performing days. Like if Saturdays and Sundays are way higher in return on ad spend, that usually means that we could spend more, significantly more, work that ROAS number maybe down a little bit, which I know sounds crazy to many people, but we can generate way more profit because we could acquire so many more customers on Saturdays and Sundays as opposed to the just maintaining the business on Monday through Friday. Keep in mind the days that I'm mentioning here are just made up days. Every business will have a different shape.
Okay, I got a couple thoughts on this.
Yeah.
What if we didn't want to spend more money, but we wanted to stop spending money on the low performing days and reallocate that budget to the high performing days, just so we can get a higher return on the same ad spend? Is that even an option?
Well, I mean, of course, it's an option. There's 2 caveats with that, two issues with that. First is the simple issue of you might not have the funnel sustained properly. So if you just eliminate, we'll just keep using the weekends or better example. If you just eliminated Monday through Thursday, then your Friday, Saturday, Sunday just might not convert as well anymore because there was possibly impressions that were just taking time to convert. That
What about just lowering those budgets instead of eliminating them?
we do that often.
Yeah.
We do that often. The way that I like to think about it is just like every ad or every ad account or every day, you just want each unit to be profitable, right? So You would not run Google ads at let's say your business needs a 2 to be profitable, 2 ROAS to be profitable, and your goal is 2.2, right? You would not run Google ads at a 0.5 return on ad spend and run Meta at a 4 return on ad spend. No, you would reduce the spend on Google until it gets to the 2, or try to find efficiencies in the platform until it gets to the 2 that you need. And you'd probably keep spending more and more and more on Meta to get as much profit out of it, even if the ROAS drop from a 4 to a 3 to a 2.2, as long as it's above your goal. The way that I think about this simply is that you want to spend as much into your goal as possible, because then again, you're acquiring as many customers as possible that are going to come back over and over and over again, assuming you have a good product. Mm-hmm. If your business is demand constrained, right, or rather supply constrained, constrained, and you literally can't fulfill all of those orders, then that changes things up. Maybe you have to raise your prices, maybe you have to do some other stuff. But when it comes to ads, then yes, you are not going to keep spending more and more. You're just going to try to get as efficient as possible, which is a very different game. In that game, we have someone in our school community. It's a fantastic guy, joins every call. And he is a demand constrained or supply constrained business. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have enough. He sells dog treats. He can't produce as many of them as possible. So his goal is like, I want the highest ridiculous return on ad spend possible. But everybody else on the call is like, we just want to drive as much profit as possible, meaning as many customers as possible coming back again and again and again.
Love it. Okay. Let's move on to your last stage. What's the last part of your process?
Scale.
And we've talked about this a little bit, but I'm assuming we've set some of this in motion, but let's talk some more about
100% we have. And that's kind of why I said at the beginning, like some of these intertwine. Scale is the most simple and most complicated at the same time, because it relies on the condition that things are going well. You don't scale into a poor return on ad spend. You don't scale into a dysfunctional business. You scale into the good times and you strike while the iron's really hot. We think of scaling in 3 ways. First, there is vertical scaling. This is really simple. Everybody knows this, even if you don't know the terminology for it. This is literally when you just increase your spend. You take your existing campaign and you increase spend on it because it's working.
How much can you increase the spend in any given season without it creating any problems?
So I am not a big fan of the learning phase. I think it's a little bit of baloney, but that's maybe another conversation. I like to think of things in triggers of anywhere from 10 to 30% most of the time.
Okay.
30% is the upper threshold, and 10% would be my bottom threshold for.
For what period of time?
Well, that would be a single day change.
Okay.
And I would generally not make another adjustment for probably 2 to 3 days.
Okay.
Unless you're a business that has a very short time to purchase.
Like you've got an event coming up or something, right?
Like you got an event to come up, or if you're like selling something, like if you're selling phone cases, right? Yeah. If you sell phone cases, they're probably like $25 average order value. That's probably 1 day and post purchases. You don't need a 7-day window to consider if you're doing well.
Right. Okay.
Second piece is horizontal scaling. This is when we, most people know this is like duplicating campaigns or building more systems throughout. We don't like to have very cluttered ad accounts these days, but in 90% of cases, the horizontal scaling that we use is from sale events or anything connected to a promotion. This would be a really easy time to just create a new campaign, give it its own budget. It's maybe only going to run for 3 days, 7 days, 10 days. And then when it's over, it's over. This keeps nice separation. It doesn't like mess too much algorithmically with things. It's
worth it for an experiment too. I mean, is that worth it for experimental creative as well? Or do you not recommend that?
I don't do that. I like to have almost all experimental creative inside of the prospecting CBO, because if it works, Facebook's quickly going to distribute budget to that experiment.
Okay.
So we could actually just test better from letting the algorithm breathe a little bit and setting maybe a minimum budget on that instead of forcing so much cash to it.
Okay.
Last part of this is we call it the twin engine for scaling. This is when you take vertical and you take horizontal, you put them together. So what that really looks like is you are increasing the spend at the same time that you are pulling apart your creatives inside of that prospecting CBO campaign. When I say pulling apart, it's like duplicating, iterating, building more of what's working. just like we talked about iterations before. One of the things that we're looking to do all the time is whatever ad is working in the account, that's a hit, 10% of the total account spend and above our target, create iterations of that ad again and again and again. We then inject those into the account. And at the same time, as long as we're over target, we're increasing vertically with spend. When we do that, what tends to happen, if done properly, is the account's efficiency, meaning the return on ad spend, stays stable. So we don't fatigue the account, and efficiency stays stable. So ROAS stays stable, and spend goes up, meaning we acquire more customers at a similar cost than we were prior while spending more, which is incredible for the health of the business.
When we were prepping, you mentioned something called a king goal. I don't know if if that's got a relevancy. If you want to bring that up, go for it.
My favorite. It's my favorite. Back to BarkBox. It always comes back to BarkBox. We had this saying. It was called CAC. So CAC, cost per acquisition, is king. CAC is king. And this stuck with me so much. I think every business should have one goal that is the most important goal for themselves. This means that if you think you need CPCs to be something, CPMs to be something, add to carts to be something, whatever, the only thing you need to come back to is this one king goal. It's usually an efficiency metric. Let's say, again, it's ROAS of 2. If your ROAS is 2, what this should mean for your business, if this is your king efficiency metric or king goal, is that even if all those other things I just named are so off, as long as we're over that ROAS target or right at that ROAS target, thumbs up, we're looking good. Like, shut out the noise, focus on the one thing that really matters. Those are all proxy metrics to the one thing.
Sam, Piliero, thank you, first of all, for sharing your insights with us. If people want to connect with you on the socials, where do you want to send them? And if they're interested in checking out your group, where should they go?
Thank you, first off. A few places. I'm basically everywhere at my full name, Sam Piliero. YouTube is the place where I give the most free content away. So if you just want to dive in, learn more about everything I just talked about, it's basically 80 to 90% free available. Otherwise, if you want to join our community where you can learn from me, I have live Q&As every week, 45 training modules, I think, and I ask and answer all questions every single day. That's school.com/Facebook, or you can just DM me on Instagram and I'll probably get back to you. That's it.
Pretty easy. You also mentioned that you were going to provide some visual. Is that something we're going to put in the show notes, or is that something you want them to reach out to you to get? This visual for the ad account structure?
I'm happy to throw it in the show notes. I'm not, we don't gatekeep anything.
Okay, cool. Sweet. Sam, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insights with us.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate your time.